fresh water is one of our most precious resources, and I think it's a part of our cultural heritage as well.
So water, I feel like, is an important part of anybody's life who lives in the Midwest, or especially around Lake Michigan.
Humans are so used to the terrestrial world. If you look at a body of water, you don't know what's in there.
Water means to me life more than anything, because no matter where you go on the planet, even in the desert where there's almost none, every animal needs some kind of water just to survive. So it's really the basis of life.
Yellow perch are a fish with, deep significance in this region, and you don't have to go very far back to see the significance of them to people.
So yellow perch are special because initially they're a prize fish for a staple for Friday fish fries around here. Every Friday fish fry you go to, they're going to have perch on the menu. Now, it may not be yellow perch because currently there's a shortage in yellow perch.
More often, we can't really find them anymore, so now they're more rare than they used to be. There was a population decline starting in the 90s, and it's continued into today.
Climate change to invasive species to pollution, there's a lot where the yellow perch had a lot going against it, and it just did not make it through, and so the populations have kind of plummeted.
And this has affected commercial fishing industries, which is important to local economies. And then also just in terms of human enjoyment of nature.
Since we are in an aquaculture lab, which means that we raise aquatic organisms, we raise them in captivity, especially some species like yellow perch that we can't harvest from the wild anymore. So we established a program here to try and breed them, to see and figure out their cycle for breeding, as well as to do feeding experiments with them to see what their nutritional requirements are so that we can better keep them going in aquaculture in the future.
So the diet of aquaculture species is important because primarily the largest cost of production for aquaculture is the feed. It can sometimes be as much as 50% of the total cost of production. And so when you have something that's that big of a factor in your production, it really dictates what's the cost of your final fillet product.
Why it's a worthwhile investment of our time and resources to better understand our native species of fish. It's a part of our heritage in the Great Lakes. I think it's also important at the same time to develop farming techniques so that we can continue to feed people.
As far as aquaculture go, they're fairly new species compared to something like trout or salmon. So if you look at the literature, there is thousands of papers on salmon and trout. There's maybe a few hundred, if that, on perch. So perch just aren't that well researched. So the research needs to be done just to really produce a proper feed to maintain them, because there isn't really any yellow perch feeds on the market. They're normally just fed a trout feed. The protocols for raising yellow perch are not very complete.
So my research specifically for my thesis is concerning the nutritional requirements for yellow perch. We're doing it through a few studies where we compare feeds that we make with feeds that are commercially made, and then do a kind of compare and contrast about how well they grow depending on which feed that they're fed.
We began to investigate the effects of ingested microplastic on yellow perch, fingerlings in particular, because while we are mainly focused on aquaculture and developing feeds for aquaculture, it can be useful to understand the effects of these emerging pollutants. But we did see differences in the nutritional quality and health overall of the fish that were fed higher concentrations of microplastic in their diet.
The research that I've been working on is we took alfalfa, which is a perennial plant, made a protein concentrate from it, and then we fed yellow perch that in various quantities of replacement of fish meal. It was fairly successful where it didn't lower the growth performance, but it did actually lower their mineral content, and the fish were growing more with less.
What we do with the perch and how the perch respond to the feed we make will impact humans' lives down the road, right? People are supposed to eat seafood because it is good for you and it has a lot of good nutrients and oils that you don't get in a lot of other foods. But at the same time, our wild catch is drastically dwindling. We are needed to help make up that difference and to hopefully be able to restore populations wild, but that's not necessarily what we got to focus on right now. We just have to focus on how do we best grow the fish for people.
Task Force is Milwaukee's free and local food bank. So we operate as a very large food bank. That's how we started. You're here at the farm, and this is an operation that we decided to take on in 2012. And the whole reason for us to be here is to infuse healthy, high-quality produce into our network, into our food pantries, and the people of Milwaukee can have this at free of charge. We lease this land from Milwaukee County for $1, which is a really awesome relationship that we have with the county. But because of that agreement, we have to run the fish hatchery, stock our ponds. That's my main focus because the natural populations of yellow perch are really suffering in these park ponds. So if I can help out those populations at all, that's really my goal, is to really try to stimulate the native population and get them to start breeding on their own in those park ponds and have them be successful out there. And obviously we're going to continue to still have to help them out because it is so heavily fished, but at least by putting in fish that are viable, they have the chance to produce on their own. But they're very unsuccessful in their native environment for some reason. There's a lot of factors working against them when they're trying to reproduce. So anything I can do to help is worth it for me.
It's important to consider all of the jobs associated with the animal husbandry. And we like to think that it starts and ends with research, but really there's quite a lot of value in the people doing the more technical labor of raising fish on farms and in managing fisheries. These are important components of a broader ecosystem, and not just an ecosystem of the natural world, but of human interactions within industries.
People are going to start noticing when that fish is becoming very expensive. So I guess that's really the biggest takeaway, is just that, so without nutritional research, there wouldn't really be fish farming as anywhere near as efficient or effective it is today.
We need to know where our food comes from, and we need to know that what we do to our environment affects other environments, and it can affect our food chain. So this is just a little bit better of a way to help the ecosystem out.
But it's really important, especially because we need to feed people. A lot of people need food. Seafood, unfortunately, has been dwindling, the wild catch, so we need to make sure that we supply it somehow, and figuring out the nutritional requirements to get the best fish possible, to feed the most people possible, is basically what I think aquaculture is about.